Hello?
Hello.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Wonderful. Greetings, lovers of lore. I'm Original Orchid,
And I'm Vicious Venus.
and happy Sunday! Yes, I know. Sunday, not Saturday. So, personal reasons, unfortunately, we weren't able to record an episode yesterday. So, today we are making up for that and to engage in this lovely Sunday in its fullest potential. We are going to have a book talk on the wonderful series, The Giver.
More specifically, the first book, but perhaps a little discussion on the other books.
Mm-hmm. Here and there, so, but mainly the first book, like you said. So, before we get into that, let's explain The Giver in a bit more detail before we get into what we thought about it. So, here's the official book summary. The Giver, the 1994 Newbery Medal winner, has become one of the most influential novels of our time. The haunting story centers on 12-year-old Jonas, who lives in a seemingly ideal, if colorless, world of conformity and contentment. Not until he is given his life assignment as the receiver of memory does he begin to understand the dark, complex secrets behind his fragile community. Lois Lowry has written 3 companion novels to The Giver, including Gathering Blue, Messenger, and Some. So now that we have that, let's have this free-for-all, completely no scripted book talk. Okay, so firstly, was there anything you liked about the book, Orchid? Or sorry, Venus. My apologies, guys.
One thing that I did like about the book was how they represented a society that's considered ideal to us. I mean, I love how they showed what would have happened if we took out all the bad things in our life. And I like how they showed that though it seems everyone is happy, it's still not a perfect society, and ultimately it's still a dystopia.
Definitely. I agree with you. I think the complexity of the plotline is just an amazing part of this novel. Because the novel has this dystopian feel, and it goes into very much detail about how individuality defines a person. And it makes the readers think about how different life would be if we were all the same, and how differences make each and every one of us unique, which is incredibly important to people of all ages and all backgrounds. Because in this book, everyone is portrayed as one. In this,
Another
hmm?
thing, yeah, continue.
Mhm. In this book, they're all portrayed as this one person in a way that,
It's like they put community over individualism.
correct,
So before you
yeah,
think for yourself, you have to think about the community, and if you don't do that, you're kind of shamed upon.
right. It discusses the dangers of sameness. Throughout the Giver, we see numerous examples of sameness throughout Jonas's town. For context, guys, many years ago, the elders of this town took away their citizens' individuality, including things such as their memories of the past, their emotions, and converted them to the uniformity feeling that if all people were the same, the world would be a much safer place. And that could be true. In their society, it is very much true. However, this sameness, as attractive as it might be to be the same, sameness also poses a significant threat to numerous aspects of life. Above all, with sameness, only mild affection can exist, but not full-fledged love. For example, in The Giver, couples are chosen for another by the committee only to raise children. There's no belief of family or closeness, but rather family is perceived as a short-lived job in this world. And then,
Yeah, that's another thing that I also wanted to discuss.
yeah,
Tying in with the family thing is another thing is that they completely took out hardships in this community. For example, marriage. Finding a good partner is not very easy. It's hard, and for many people they struggle to find a good person to spend the rest of their lives with. However, in this community, your partner is chosen for you. They talk about your personality, they look into your personality, your job, and how you feel about having a partner and family, and through that they choose a partner for you. You don't go on your own journey finding somebody. Somebody else chooses it for you and tells you, yes, this is the best person for you. And although that is good in the long run, it takes out the whole journey, it takes out the whole meaning of finding a partner. It makes everything so meaningless because it's just handed to you on a silver platter.
Uh, I disagree. I mean, I agree with your notion in general, but disagree how you said in the long run this would be better. Because in this book, in this world actually, love doesn't exist due to the notion that everyone must be alike.
Oh,
So the way
true. I
they,
kind of skimmed
yeah,
over that.
so the way they explain it is that no one person should experience love when the other cannot. Because in this world, love is such a foreign concept in this book. For example, when Jonas asks his mother if she loves him, she answers saying, love is such a meaningless word that is almost obsolete. From this, it's shown that when sameness is instilled in society, all feelings of love are just retracted, and these feelings are replaced more with the absence of emotion for all society to endure. So, in the way you were saying it, the way they've taken out this journey of love, I think it's more than just a journey of love. I think love, cherishment, friendship, all of those, companionship, they're definitely important. And it's horrible that it's been taken away for the sole duty of sameness.
And
However,
that's,
one
yeah, that
second.
is something that I also kind of completely forgot, and is something that Orchid reminded me of. I remember when we were discussing about The Giver, I said that they still felt happy and content, but Orchid brought up that, again, they did not feel any love and they did not feel deep emotions. They kind of felt like a very neutral version of those types of emotions. And yes, going through pain and hardship is horrible, but because of those hardships and problems, you understand the full meaning of what it is to be loved, what it is to have friends, and in this society, it's nothing like that. Your friends are often just given to you. You know everybody in the neighborhood, everyone knows you. Your family is chosen for you, and it kind of just makes everything so meaningless because now they don't value their parents as much as we would in our lives.
Yeah,
Same goes for other aspects. For example, jobs. You don't get to choose your job or your field of work. The elders chose your jobs depending on which field you seem to have the most interest in. And although this would be great for the person because they get to be in the field of um, work that they want to be in, often, again, it kind of makes it very meaningless. I mean, now in our world, if you want to be an artist, for example, you have to work hard in polishing your art craft, and you have to work hard into getting a place in where you want to be. You actually have to work to get the job you want, but in this world, they give it to you.
right. And what I think, why do I keep doing this? What Venus was talking about, sorry, is that earlier, this is actually the reason we decided to talk about The Giver. Me and Venus were discussing whether this book was a utopia or a dystopia. She believed it was a utopia because everyone's just so happy, whereas I thought it was a dystopia because of all these feelings being retracted. However, it does go into sort of the internal conflict of the book, because the internal conflict of The Giver, in my opinion, revolved around Jonas's emotions when he realizes his perfect community isn't as perfect as he thought, which is sort of surrounding this happiness that's portrayed. Towards the beginning of the book, Jonas has all these positive emotions about his community. After all, there are no problems such as world hunger or poverty. Everyone has a perfect life. Everyone plays a productive role in society, emotions are controlled, and everyone's happy. However, once Jonas starts his training to become the next receiver, he began to see the world a bit differently. He encountered anxiety, emotions such as pain and sadness, and learned of war and violence, which led Jonas to question the feeling of security and the controlled environment a society seemed to provide. Jonas's emotions about his town evolved for the worse when he watched his first release. So basically, what the releases were, which for all of Jonas's life, his parents and the elders of the council described release as a happy prospect of people being taken to elsewhere in hopes of having a happy life for these people when they got old. It was supposed to be like their gift to elderhood. However, in reality, he learned that what release actually is the medical physicians of the community actually euthanize these people, whether they be old or children who don't follow the rules of the town, which deeply upset Jonas. Because the boy his family has been taking care of, Gabriel, is about to be released due to having insomnia and not being able to sleep through the night, which ended up convincing Jonas to flee to elsewhere, which elsewhere is what they call elsewhere from everywhere except their town because they don't know anything except their town. With Gabriel, even though he'd lose all his friends and family for good, which I think greatly revolves around what we're talking about. Because, guys, they're euthanizing people.
Especially
Because
for
they're
things that they can't control, such as in the case of Gabriel. Gabriel's just a baby. What is he supposed to know about insomnia and his sleeping properly? That's the adult's job to take care of.
right. I
I
believe
get
that
it. He was like really tough to take care of, but it didn't mean you have to release him.
yeah. I believe he also had a disability, am I right?
I think so. He just wasn't meeting the requirements of an average baby, so they had to release him.
Right. Like, guys,
It's
just
terrible.
it's ridiculous is what it is. Like, if we saw it in our world where it was like,
There would be an
oh yeah,
outrage.
yeah, where all the government officials were like, oh, all these kids in the shelters, all these kids with disabilities, we're just gonna send them elsewhere, aka we're gonna euthanize them. Like Vicious Venus said, there'd be an outrage. But in this society, I don't think it's something that's very described in the book. I mean, it is. It's a huge plot twist in the book. But I mean, at the same time, I feel like it revolved more about emotions, which it definitely should have. Whereas this actual release, where it's showing that the dangers of sameness once again. When somebody, when everyone's striving for sameness, when they want everyone to be the same and somebody's different,
They'll kind of like cut out that different person and toss that different person aside and say, if you're not going to be like one of us, then you can't be a part of the society.
exactly. Whereas in our world, we're not perfect, of course. We ourselves live in a dystopian society, especially during the pandemic and several other life events that have been taking place during this time for several other people. It's shown us we don't live in a utopia. However, at the same time, currently our world's in a place where we're trying to embrace our differences. We try to embrace our differences, and there's a difference between that and sameness. Because embracing our differences in our society, we say, oh, if you're different, that means you're going to help society. Oh my god, if you're different, then this is your gift to the world because differences are what make people people. But in this society, everybody's the same because nobody's different, which may sound like, oh, that's the point of sameness. But really think about that. Nobody is different. Absolutely no one. There's no differences. It's a huge society where everyone wakes up at the same time, sleeps at the same time. They all have the same dinners. They all have these jobs distributed by society. They all have they're all required to have this husband. They're all required to have these two children. If you really think about it, I very much doubt they have LGBTQ there because it's their perfect ideal family is one man, one husband, one wife, and two children.
Which is not what every family should be, to be honest.
Right. And the two children is a girl and a boy. What on earth is that type of family? Or everyone can have that family. I'm not saying anything against it. But
That's not
is
the
that the life?
perfect family, to be honest. There is no perfect
There
family.
there is no perfect family. Family is just where your heart is. Just like home is where your heart is.
Another
There
thing
is no perfect family.
that I'd
Yeah?
like to say is that there was another point about the whole scene when where Jonas learns what release is. I think during that
Mm-hmm.
scene, um that's when he actually began to realize the value of life itself. Because if you think about it, this entire time in the society, everything is so easy. He doesn't have to fight for anything. He doesn't have to fight for his rights, his food, his money, his freedom. He doesn't have to fight for it. And then when he sees the release, that's when he truly understands what life really is. He understands that Gabriel's fighting for his life because he's going to be released. He understands that life is important and it's not just some little silly, I don't know, game that he can just play. It's not always happy and perfect. It's something that should be valued a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the
And I think,
society, like
yeah.
what we said before, if you're different, you're tossed out. They don't treat life with the value it should be treated. Since Gabriel was different, nobody was hesitating to release him. They all agreed, all the doctors agreed he has to be released.
Right. And I think more on that is the fact that we only want something once we realize we can't have it. Or we want something that we don't have. You don't see people in our everyday lives. Like, think about it this way, things like college. Would you work as hard in high school if your college was guaranteed? No, you wouldn't. Because we only because our motivation for working hard is to get something we don't have. And in this case, they have everything. They can't think about what they don't have. They simply don't have that emotional capacity. They have no poverty, they have no world destruction, everybody's happy. They have everything. But when you have everything, you can't strive for more. You can't strive for greatness. Just like shown from the release. Jonas actually stated that he doesn't know what happens to people when they grow old. He just thinks they go to release, and release is sort of, in his mind, some sort of heaven. Then for the elderly, it was torture for young children, but apparently in their world, release feels like heaven. But then here's the deal. We work so hard in our life to leave an impact on the world because everybody knows our life is temporary. We don't say, oh, in 2,000 years we're going to do this. No, because we know we're not going to be here anymore. We have a concept of death. We know life, death. And because we're going to die soon, everyone's lives are temporary. Everyone tries to make the most of their lives. You hear all these inspirational quotes, all these inspirational people saying, make the most of your life because you're not always going to have this. But they don't have a concept of death. So if you can't have a concept of this time is going to be terminal, how can you live your life to the fullest?
That's a good point. And yeah, to be honest, I don't think release was ever seen as this sort of end because for most people they grow, they become old, and when they become too old then they're released. And for them, by the time they are old, they just don't have much to do. They just sit around and, you know, just do nothing. So for them, release is like, okay, whatever, it's another event in our life. And to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
growing old is something not a lot of people do. Some people die before they grow old. And for them, growing old is a step, it's a procedure before you become released. Obviously, there are instances like Gabriel who get released way earlier than they should be. But yeah, to them, release just doesn't feel like an ending of their life. It's more like, oh, it's just another step in our whole procedure.
Yeah, because as far as the public can see, the public can only see these. elders walking into this door. They're walking into this door, and then the public cannot see anything anymore. That's all they see, walking into this beautiful door. So they think, oh, release is this amazing thing. Same with a lot of these other things. But as we've seen through Jonas seeing his father euthanize a baby, and he saw, I believe, the elder being euthanized. That's not what happens. They walk through that door and they're euthanized. Nobody knows what happens. They just think, oh, they walked through that door to heaven. No. They walked through that door and they got euthanized. They died.
And yes, some of the people in the community do feel like release is a happy celebration, and at the same time, it's also treated with like some seriousness, some sadness. But to be honest, it's not treated the way we would treat death in our society. For example, if we go to a funeral, we're all sad and serious, but at release, everyone's partying and happy.
Mm-hmm.
When before Jonas knows what a release is, his father was telling him about Gabriel and saying, "Oh, we might have to release Gabriel because his sleep schedule isn't just working out." And at that time, Jonas doesn't feel sadness. He's just thinking, "Oh, what a shame for Gabriel." He's not sad, he's not retaliating, he's not feeling any sorrow. He's just like, "Oh, that's a
Mm-hmm.
shame. Poor Gabriel." And that's really it.
Mm.
And Gabriel's a baby. He's like a month old baby.
I think he's younger than that,
Yeah, younger
actually.
than that.
Because they got him, like, maybe a week after he was born. Because his father worked in, like, the child department. Yeah. I think another thing I just remembered. We've already talked about how the spouses were chosen for people by the elders solely for raising children. However, what we forgot is that they actually consume stirring pills, so they don't start to show any type of attraction to the other gender or whatever gender they are attracted to, though in this case it seems like the giver is a very heterosexual society. And then they also take these stirring pills so they don't grow too attached to anybody. However, towards the middle of the novel, Jonas decided to stop taking his pills and started growing emotion for a girl he liked. And he sort of saw that through this, a life where you're not able to make your own choices or be your own person is not a life well lived. Because this outcome of extensive control and restrictions the community faces is just the fact that they can't live their life. As many people would say, yes, you definitely don't need a partner in your life, and you should never feel like you need one. However, in their society, they don't have a choice to have one. They don't have a choice to harness affection.
Like I said before with the release, the whole marriage and having a partner thing, it's considered another step in their procedure. Once you're old enough and once they find somebody who is suitable for you, you you're just married to this person who they say is the best option for you.
Yeah.
And you don't have any romantic attachments whatsoever, so you don't question it.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think around that as well. The book also discusses, in my opinion, from this book, the most important thing in life, which to me always changes depending on the book. However, upon the novel The Giver, they make it very clear from their perspective that the most important thing in life is undoubtedly memories. Now, before someone questions, why are you bringing memories into this? We're talking about emotions. Let me explain. To begin, memories allow us to correct our past mistakes and shape a better future. But if one can't remember their errors, they can repeat them. For example, in this book, the elders of society decided to eliminate their people's memories of the past in order to release them from their mistakes, because if you can't recall your previous experiences, to you, you never experienced it. So due to this, many of Jonas's friends continue to play games of war and find thrill in them. since they can't remember the feeling of violence and death associated with them in the past. In the absence of memory, there's no chance to correct that past, thus setting the world back as the same mistakes continue to occur. Therefore, memory is crucial to life, seeing as it allows us to learn from our errors rather than allowing them to harm us. In this case, they basically romanticized war. They said, "Oh my God, I want." They're making this huge thing out of violence and bloodshed. In our society, we think, "Oh, violence, bloodshed, bad." They also think that as well, but for play purposes, they're okay with it. However, in our society, that would be seen as a huge, major no-no because we know all the bad things that have happened because of it. Another example of displaying this is when the giver states that he began doing Jonas's training with memories of pleasure because his previous failure gave him the wisdom to do that. Using this piece of evidence, we can understand that due to the giver's memories of the past, he was able to correct his errors and save Jonas from feeling overwhelmed to the point where only death could help, as the previous trainee had felt, because his previous trainee had just been overwhelmed from all these negative emotions, because in her life, she had always seen this perfection. So when all this negativity is just overloaded on you at once, you're going to come crashing down. Because here's the deal, you can't keep negativity out of your life. It's impossible. So when it is going to come down, and I'm 100% sure that girl is not the only person it has come down on. Just like Jonas isn't the only person. I'm sure there have been more, and they've all been erased from memory.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, perhaps the pills are there to prevent that sort of thing happening.
Right, the pills are there to basically stop them from feeling emotion and attraction. Because they start taking it around, they're like,
Around like 12 or 13 ish.
yeah, which is generally when people get like crushes and things like that. They're trying to stop everything from happening, but they don't understand that if you don't have a choice, it doesn't feel like anything. That crush doesn't mean anything. However, where they're trying to stop it is they're like, oh, if you feel love, nobody else can. Love causes all this heartache. Oh my God, you're gonna be better off without it. No. If you have your memories, you're gonna be fine. Because if you engage in this sort of toxic behavior, toxic relationship, once, your memory is going to prove crucial to fix your mistakes and reach success in your life. Without your memories, you can't feel complete emotion because you can't remember the emotions you experienced during the memory. So the feeling just vanishes.
Yeah, that's another really important thing since, like, most people don't have memories of previous stuff. They don't have much knowledge about that kind of stuff, which was honestly the reason why the receiver is an actual job, because they need at least one person to
Mm-hmm.
stay around and give advice on what to do with their previous memory.
Right. The reason the giver is there is only because, and that's why the giver is such a big, important role, the receiver, sorry. It's because it's like, oh, everybody else is the same. And they're trying to discourage differences. However, in this one point, they make it very clear that they're contradicting themselves because they're saying we need one person to be different. Otherwise, our society is going to come crashing
Which is
down.
quite ironic
You need
because,
this one person.
to be honest, if one person who is different from the rest is the thing that is keeping your society not crashing down, then I wonder how your society is going to do if everybody else is different.
Yeah. Like, if there's one person is stopping you from being a total train wreck, wouldn't there, wouldn't it be better for everybody to be like that? You're literally saying that, okay, everybody has to be the same except you. There you go. You're going to be different.
You're going
Thank
to,
you.
take upon the role of upholding our entire society, so no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. You're gonna have all this negativity come crashing down on you because our society has been horrible and we are not giving you emotion.
Honestly, that's
No
another
pressure.
thing that I don't understand because, like you said before, receiver before Jonas couldn't handle all of the negativity, and she asked to be released. She actually went to the doctors and said, I want to release, and she got herself released. Jonas, after receiving all that negativity and understanding what release was, he took Gabriel and ran out of the community. But what about the giver? He's been there for so long. He's kept these memories for a long time, and he has seen two receivers run away from their responsibilities. Why did he stay? How did he stay?
He said he stayed because even if Jonas left, which the giver actually told Jonas to leave,
True.
save himself. The giver said that if he didn't stay, then the society would come crashing down. People needed the giver
Yeah,
in
that's
order
another thing,
to,
though. Didn't the
keep
giver
the society.
disagree with how society was being run?
He did, but he didn't see there was any changes
True.
yet
I
now,
guess he just knew that
that the damage
it's
had been
too
done.
late. He can't change anything, so might as well stick around and make sure nobody goes insane.
Do you think they could have changed it if they tried? Or do you think it was too late?
Probably too late. There's already been like generations of this society. It's kind of been drilled into people's brains, and then all of a sudden trying to change that. Not only that, like you said, all this negativity would come crashing down on these people. Those kids who played this game of war would understand what war actually was.
Yeah. Even if they distributed all their emotions and memories to everybody, because there's been no negativity in their lives, everyone would just have these mental breakdowns. They wouldn't be able to fully grasp it. Because what doesn't kill you, let's quote this from a song, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And they haven't gotten the experiences of making themselves stronger because everything has been entailed so that there's no suffering in their world.
True.
Yeah. In addition to this, I also liked the character development that
Yeah,
Jonas
that was
went through.
honestly very beautiful. He went
Yeah,
from being one of
it
like
was.
everybody else in the society to understanding how things really worked, and he understood what emotions were. He understood the flaws in his society, and he understood the importance of life, and he was like 12 or 13.
Right. He went from this innocent young boy who trusts his parents completely and the elders of society wholeheartedly. But then he went through so much pain. He got these memories of pain. He got these memories of trauma. He was able to see color again, which, by the way, how on earth were they able to make the entire human population
I
completely
don't know. That
colorblind?
was like very
I don't
intense
know.
genetic manipulation. I just could not understand.
I know they didn't explain
I
it. They're
think
just
they kind
like,
of hinted at it
we did
because
it.
there's this one part where the giver was explaining color to Jonas, and he was talking about one of Jonas's friends, and the giver says, "Oh yeah, she has bright red hair. It must have frustrated the scientists to genetically remove color." So I think they did two things. One, they must have removed some parts of the eye that perceives color, and two, they must have also genetically altered some parts of your body to be colorless. For example, hair and skin, they might have removed pigment so that way you'd just be colorless, sort of.
Mm, I don't think they removed pigment, but I think more or less because he said they changed perception. I think they were somehow able to change the
True.
perception of the
And
brain.
perhaps scientists struggled with Jonas's friend's hair because it was such a bright red, it might trigger some parts of the eye into perceiving that when they shouldn't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but going back to the character development, after all of this, and Jonas is watching his father, or sorry, he watched the recording of his father euthanizing and disposing this innocent child without any regret or remorse. He began to lose trust and that admiration for his parents. This part I don't exactly agree with, because he began to lose admiration and trust for them. I think it's more that he should have lost admiration and trust for society, which he did, but particularly his parents, and he's saying, how could you, father? You're not the person I thought you were. Your father was not a person at all. He did not have emotion. Nor did your sister, nor did your mother. I understand how terrible that must have been for you because you loved them. They raised you. They treated you as their child. You were their child. but it wasn't the same. And regarding that, yeah, this part of the novel sort of changed Jonas for the better, or Jonah for the better, and made him realize how much is wrong in his community, even in his family, which ultimately led him to leave his community for good. Both Jonas and both Jonas leaving his community and Jonas's withdrawal allows us to more understand how much the character has changed since the start of the novel, since now Jonas has opened his eyes up and seen the world for what it is, and developed the courage to leave his town, something that he didn't have
Before, like,
before.
leaving the town wasn't even like an idea, wasn't an option to him. The town was everything he knew, the society and how it worked there. That was what he considered to be home. And when he received those memories, he realized, okay, maybe my home isn't as great as I thought it would be.
Right. I think they also, one of the character traits they displayed throughout his portrayal was bravery, which Jonas, who, as we probably already give you some insight into, is the main protagonist of the novel in The Giver, the first book. And he was constantly displayed as brave throughout the story. Let me explain on that as well. So, towards the beginning of the novel, Jonas was, like we said, fairly ignorant of the misdeeds occurring in his society. Not at
Obviously,
school,
and
of
besides,
course.
most kids of
But
his
once he
age
came,
were ignorant as well. It was normal.
right, yet once he gained some insight into his thoughts, or his world, his thoughts began to change. He began paying more attention to the wrongdoings in his society, such as killing the old and the weak, as well as preventing strong feelings for other people through stirring pills. Eventually, Jonas decided to take action, and the next day, Jonas decided to pack up his things and whisked Gabriel, who was a child who was about to be killed, the next day, as we elaborated earlier, to elsewhere, and he didn't look back. A brave person is not one that has no fears, but a brave person is one that sets their fears aside to do the right thing no matter what. And this is exactly what Jonas did. Despite his fears about going to elsewhere or for his future, he willingly risked his life to save Gabriel from being sentenced to an untimely death, just as any brave individual would.
And also, I think he probably might have made some sort of statement in his community. I mean, to be honest, I wonder what that would say about being a receiver when two receivers in a row have ran
He
away.
did actually. Yeah, actually, Venus hasn't read the fourth book. I've read the entire series. In the fourth book, it shows it from mostly from the point of view of Gabriel's mother. So it shows what happened afterwards, and his father was so angry, even though he didn't really know what happened. He was so angry. Just everyone was just so angry, shocked. Like, oh my God, what's happening to our
Why
perfect
did a
society?
receiver leave? It couldn't have been that hard, could it
Exactly.
have?
Which I'm sure, yeah, if he can leave, can we leave? How do you leave? But going on, because this is a book talk, of course, there's going to be some things we didn't like about the novel as well. While The Giver was a wonderful novel, there were definitely a few flaws throughout the book. The main setback, at least for me, was how the book ended. The book ended with Gabriel and Jonas stranded in the mountains on the verge of death from hypothermia. The author left us terrified for both Jonas and Gabriel's life, and left us wondering if they ever made it to elsewhere, as well as what happened to the community after their departure. Overall, a bitter ending to this great book. Though, while I didn't like it while I was reading it, looking back, I do think this was the right decision, because it left you on an edge to read the next book. But moreover, it made you think, wow, he wanted freedom so badly, he was willing to die.
Which is quite interesting. Anyway,
Exactly.
yeah,
I think
continue.
also I think also if I was going to be extremely nitpicky, I think the author provided excessive detail toward during the ceremony of 12, which at the ceremony of 12 the author uses a lot of detail to explain each person in Jonas's year from what they're wearing to what their job is and to how important this is, which ended up making the reader lose a bit of interest in the scene. Because at this point in time, we'd only been introduced to two people, Jonas and Asher, Asher being his best friend. So many of the other names meant nothing. Although, that's only if I'm being extremely nitpicky.
I think we should wrap this up now. It's been 40 minutes, and we've been talking about The Giver.
Yeah. Okay. So, because we didn't do the disclaimers at the beginning, obviously none of this belongs to us, but the amazing author of The Giver, which, by the way, I will write what this book was and who the author was in the description, so you can totally check that out. And I highly, highly, highly recommend you check that out. And assuming you have checked that out and you are listening to this podcast episode now, what did you think of it? What do you think about the book? Do you think that memories prove to be essential? What do you think about their taking away of emotion? What do you think about, honestly, this entire book in its entirety? Let us know, depending on your platform, by either commenting or messaging. And as always, thank you, thank you, thank you, our lovers of lore.
And I'm Vicious Venus.
I'm Original Orchid. And thank you for giving us some of your time today on this wonderful Sunday, or whenever you're listening to this, to help us and listen to us, and overall have an amazing Lovers of Lore day. So thank you so much,
Bye.
and we'll see you next week.